I have two Proxmox nodes in my Homelab, and I like to cluster them. But in my use case, I'm guaranteed to run into issues maintaining Quorum. Proxmox nodes in the cluster vote on actions of the cluster to ensure that the cluster state is always synchronized and coherent. Without enough nodes available to vote, the cluster is unable to function, and this is known as a loss of quorum. For my use case, I have a primary server running on a small form factor PC, which runs all of my critical home infrastructure. I also have a secondary server on a much larger host, where I have a much bigger sandbox to play with. Since this server uses a lot more power, I shut it down when I'm not using it. So, if I were to cluster my two nodes, I'm guaranteed to lose quorum every time I shut down the second server. I could add a Raspberry Pi to throw its vote in the hat, but I'm already expecting to lose a vote most of the time when the second server shut down. So now my critical primary node is relying on the reliability of the Raspberry Pi to stay functional, whereas if I don't cluster it, it's only relying on itself. So this is not a great solution for me. Instead, I'm going to give the primary node an extra vote so it can continue to function all on its own. The process for this is pretty simple. So here I have a cluster with two nodes, and I want to give pve1 an extra vote. So I'm going to log into the shell in pve1 and edit the quorate file, which is in etc pve. So the etc pve folder is synchronized across all nodes in the cluster coherently, so any changes you make will automatically be pushed to the other cluster nodes. So we have to be very careful when editing this because we could make a change by accident that gets propagated to all of the nodes and messes them all up. So the recommended thing to do is to make a copy of the config, edit it, save it, and then replace the originals. So the file we need is quorate.conf. So we're going to make a copy of it, and then we're going to edit the copy. So this is what the quorate configuration looks like. You can see there's two nodes here, pve1 and pve2. Each of them has their address, which in this case is 228 and 238. You can have potentially more than one address here if you have redundant networks. And so the important thing we need to do is we need to give pve1 one more vote. So we change that from 1 to 2. Now, in addition, we have to go down here to the config version and increment this. So currently it's at 2. It's been changed twice. So we need to bump that to 3, which tells all the nodes that they need to reload their configuration. So now we can save. Now we need to move the new file in place of the old file. Done. So now if we go to the data center, to the cluster, we can see that the node pve1 has 2 votes. And if we go to high availability, we can see quorum is okay. So now I'm going to shut down pve2. And if I shut down pve2, pve1 should still maintain quorum. It should still be able to function. So if we go back to the data center, we can see quorum is still okay, but both nodes are still here. So pve2 is in the process of shutting down. And there, we've lost pve2. But quorum is still okay. So the cluster can continue functioning with only the primary node. In my use case, with the small form factor PC running all the time and the larger server being shut down intentionally, I'm not trying to get high availability of my virtual machines. I just want to be able to copy them back and forth using the built-in cluster migration utility. And this gets me that.